go. Sherry, could you call the roll, please? Thank you.
Did you want to call the meeting to order first?
I just did. My mic
Oh.
wasn't on. That's why you didn't
So
hear
will
it.
you please do it again, because the audience didn't hear out on TV.
So I'd like to call the meeting to order, or I call the meeting to order. It is 5:05. And Sherry and I are now conversing. Okay. Sherry, are you ready for us to call the roll then? Or are we
Chair
ready?
Akins,
Yes, here.
Commissioner Basasha,
Here.
Commissioner Sims,
Here.
Commissioner Walker,
Here.
Vice Chair McHatton absent.
Yep, she's excused. Thank you. Okay, we'll continue with Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd stand with me and follow along. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Okay. Let me just read for public communications. Public communications is the time set aside during the Historic Preservation Commission meeting for members of the public to address the Historic Preservation Commission on items of city business other than scheduled agenda items. Matters raised at this time may be briefly discussed by the commission and will generally be referred to staff and/or placed on a subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than for emergency items, no action can be taken at this meeting. So, public comments. I have some people who've marked, well, one person marked public comments, but they actually want to speak on item 5, and so I will call them. Seems to be, I have 3 speaker cards. All 3 want to speak on item number 5, and then there's one other person that wants to speak on items number 2 and 4, so we'll get to them in just a minute. So next thing, let's see. You wanted to speak on public comments and 2, 4, and 5?
Yes.
Okay, my mistake.
No problem.
So, yes, Steve, come to the mic. Please tell us who you are.
Hi, my name is Stephen Schaefer. I am president of the San Buenaventura Conservancy for Preservation. We are sort of excited to see some of the things happening up here in Ojai as far as historic preservation. And obviously, since Ojai is such a historic town, we'd like to help with any events that might come up, educational things. We have had partnerships with the city of Ventura in the past and the county of Ventura in the past for educational seminars and things like that. So as you move forward and possibly have ideas about things you'd like to focus on, whether that's surveys or benefits or just an understanding of historic preservation practice or CEQA, we have been able to partner with the California Preservation Foundation and also the Office of Historic Preservation in Sacramento, and sometimes come down and have speakers from LA and Sacramento and San Francisco come into Ventura or Ojai or Camarillo or Thousand Oaks. We're talking with different people to do educational programming. So if that sounds interesting, the San Buenaventura Conservancy for Preservation has a website called sbconservancy.org where you can read about our programming. It is mostly in Ventura, but we are also doing work in Santa Paula and Camarillo, and would like to do some partnering up in Ojai as well. So hope to hear from you, take a look at what we have to offer, and I'll have some other comments for some of the other specific topics. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. I have looked at your website several times. It is fabulous and has great history and great resources. Thank you. Okay. Now I'll continue to look at Next thing on the agenda is the museum representative report. And I talked to Wendy Barker, who is the executive director for the museum, and she asked me to remind folks that, again, this year, like we did last year, there will be an Ojai Valley Museum New Year's Eve spectacular. This is family-oriented, so it's kind of goes on the clock for New York rather than the clock for Los Angeles, so we can start early and finish early and not keep the kids up too late. Hopefully, the better news this year is that it's not going to, last December when this event took place on December 31st, it was an introduction in the rain that was hitting that night for what was going to follow in January. Only we didn't know that was going to happen. It poured all night long. The event ended up being sold out and people stayed. Fortunately, we rented a big tent in preparation and people stayed through the program. So dancing, crafting, performers, fingers, foods, drinks, cash bar, and DJ Michael Jorgensen, local, if you know him. So that's our museum representative report. Consent items. The minutes. Do we have any corrections, adjustments to the minutes?
I'll move approval.
Okay, and second?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Sherry, could you call the roll, please?
Akins,
Yes.
Basacha,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, the next item up, well, first of all, we have disclosure of site visits and ex parte contacts. Someone who's talking missed the email, or he'd be declaring. So,
Yes, I went up and was very graciously welcomed up at the Westways, the property that's on the agenda for tonight, and just was very happy with the reception I got, and went over all the issues and the changes that were proposed. So I really appreciated having that opportunity. Thank you.
great, thank you, Craig. Nobody else?
Yes, I also did a similar site visit and met with Joel, and it was a very interesting visit. As many times as I'd been on the property, I had never been at the house. But he showed me what was going on, and also previous to that, I'll disclose that I spoke with my brother-in-law, who is working on the property as a general contractor, and I just wanted to get his feedback on what was going on, and then the whole thing evolved to more of a site visit and so on.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we will move to public hearing item number 2, and that deals with the property that was the 2 commissioners visited this week. And so, staff report from Mara, please.
Thank you, Chair Akins and Commissioners. Work permit 23005 is regarding relocation of an existing exterior door and replacement with a window located at 700 San Antonio Street. It's historic landmark number 25, called the Westways Ranch. On November 15th, 2023, the applicant submitted an application including a full scope of work for relocation of the existing door to be replaced by a window. And as indicated on the plans that are in your packet, a door to a maintenance room on the front of the main residence is proposed to be relocated on the east elevation, tucked in a sort of alcove that's also on the front of the house, but it's still on an eastern elevation. The style and the material of the door match the vertical panels of an existing door on the north elevation. No windows are proposed on the relocated door. A window is proposed to replace that existing door, and the window is multi-paned with 2 panes across the top and 4 down, which match a majority of the existing windows on the north elevation of the structure. Staff is recommending that the Commission approve the request as submitted. On October 24th, 2017, the Ojai City Council designated the Westways as a city landmark, number 25, and entered into a Mills Act agreement also in November of 2027. And conditions for the Mills Act agreement include that prior to issuance of any building or demolition permit, as well as work not requiring such permits, that the property owners submit for review and approval by the HPC. And those specific features that are within the objects of record that would be reviewed and need to request an approval from the HPC include the wood shingle siding and also the multi-light casement windows set in wood frames and glazed wood doors, which both of these alterations that are happening now would qualify as such. And again, staff is recommending approval, and from some comments made already, I think we have the applicant here in the audience. So if you have any questions of me, I'm available. Thanks.
I do have one request before we move forward. Could you please introduce our visitor that's on your left for us, please, so we know who?
Oh, I guess I didn't realize that our attorney here has never been here before.
Not to the
And,
HPC.
And you know what? At the moment, I'm drawing a blank on Thais's last name. Alvis?
Yeah.
Sorry, Thais Alvis. We spent a half an hour together this evening before the meeting and some other time too, but I should have known her name or remembered it anyway. Anyway, this is Assistant City Attorney?
Mm-hmm.
Assistant City Attorney Thais Alvis, and she's here tonight to discuss, I believe it's item number 5.
Mhm.
So welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Great to be at this HPC meeting.
I was going to say something about the planning commission. The HPC were a lot more fun and happy.
Yeah, so far it's way more fun.
And I know Steve really well, Chair Quillisi. So anyway, do you work at the same firm as Matt Summers or a different firm? Or
Yes,
you do?
same firm. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know I talked to City Attorney Summers in November, and he told me that they weren't sure yet who was going to be here. So nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so any questions for Mara on the staff report? No? Okay, so we will open the public hearing for public comments. And I'll bring Stephen Schaefer up. He is the only one for item number 2.
Steve Schaefer, Sanborn and Ventura Conservancy. Because I was coming up, obviously I read the whole agenda and the attachments, and this looks like a pretty typical and acceptable adaptation. Meets the Secretary of the Interior standards, which is really the threshold that you need to meet in order to have a compliant adaptation or alteration to the house, and it's really not on the primary facade of the house, which is really the most important thing that everybody's nervous about. It's on these little alcoves, so the Conservancy would definitely support this. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So I guess we will then close public comments and open it up to the applicants.
Would you like us to come up or what?
Yes, please. The TV empire out there would like to hear what you're saying.
Oh, okay.
There are people that watch.
Hi, good evening. My name's Chris Densel, and I'm with the project as the architect, and Joel Horowitz.
I'm Joel Horowitz. I'm the project manager, estate manager at 700 San Antonio Street.
And I don't think there's a lot to say. It's actually been described as well as or better than I might describe the project. It's very non-invasive, low impact visually, and it's taking a door out, putting a window in its place, and re-shingling, and all the detailing will be handled in the at the quality level of the existing house. And then where we need a door to get into the new mechanical space, that will have the same planking detailing as the other doors, and will be a clear oil type finish to match those.
Very nice. Questions for Chris or Joel? Yes, please.
I have a couple of questions for you. One of the things that kind of struck me as I was reading the report was that you were taking an existing door and you were going to replace it with a window. And that makes sense because we encourage people to renovate the insides of their historic homes and bring them up to standard and adaptively reuse them. And it looks like you're doing a great job of doing that. And that would mean that that door, that the existing door, which used to go into the mechanical room, would now open right on the loo, you know, where, which doesn't make any sense at all. It would just have to be locked. And then you're creating a new doorway over in that alcove where the new mechanical room is. My question is, why aren't you taking the existing door and moving it around? Because one of the Secretary of the Interior standards is to try to preserve as much of the existing material and fabric as possible, and that could be achieved by moving that door over, but there might be a reason.
Well, yes, that's a good question. The door that we're removing, I don't believe is an original door. All the doors on the house have I think it's called the River of Life. It's this curve shape that goes vertically as the bevel planks join. Mm-hmm. And so we could use the existing mechanical door. It's not hung on the same side in terms of the hinges. We could put the hinges on the other side. So it could be reused, but I believe the feeling is to upgrade it to what all the other doors are, rather than it be a mechanical door.
I see. And then would the window that you create, and you're going to use the same style as the other windows, but is the material going to be like for like? Is it?
The material's like for like, the color's like for like. The only thing that may not be technically like for like, it'll be a new piece of glass and not one from 1927.
A new piece of glass, but it'll be single.
It'll be the same, yeah.
Single
all the
pane.
same OG molding and, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
But we could use either door. I mean, we could possibly.
Well, maybe think about that. And I
Okay.
thought too that if you didn't use it, at least maybe you could label it and store it. So if a future owner decided they did want to put that back on, that they would be available to them. But
We'd be happy to do that.
if you could use it,
Sure.
that would be nice.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Rick, do you have any questions after being there?
I don't know. I was satisfied by my visit with Joel.
Very nice. Loren, have you been to the property before?
I've been to the property, a number of times as a child and then later on in life. It's a beautiful, beautiful home. The Wilsons were fantastic people, and it's wonderful to see that you're preserving it. And I was going to ask the question about using the door again. So I would appreciate it if you could look twice at that,
We
too.
will. We'll take a second look. And would you like us to report back which way we go, or
That would be great. Great.
just through?
Yeah, through Mara's fine.
Okay.
That will update our record, so
Okay, good.
the next group that comes along will know to
We'll do
look
that.
for it.
That would make us really happy, but
Okay.
we understand there might be issues, so.
There may not be.
Okay.
We might be using that.
Chris, how long have you been architect for the property?
Excuse me?
How long have you been the
Well,
architect for the property?
I believe the property was purchased in July or August.
It closed in August, yes.
And so I was already working with the clients on another project outside of Ojai, so I came on board within a few weeks of the closing of escrow.
Great,
And I'm from Santa Barbara.
very nice, very nice.
And come from a family with a lot of historical roots and carousels and big old homes in Beverly Hills from the 20s and the 30s.
Very nice.
So it's in my
very
blood.
nice.
Well, it's interesting because this house is a little different than you usually find in Ojai, and
Very different.
probably because of the architect was from the East Coast and did the shingle style building, but it's just such a beautiful addition, and the estate is just incredible.
Yeah, it's a real treat to visit each time. Thank you.
And Joel, I'm told you're on your third set of owners?
Second.
Second,
This is the
okay.
second set, yes.
Yeah, when I heard third, I'm like, I'm not sure about that.
No,
Yeah.
it is
But definitely second. So, yeah, I've met Joel when we were, before when we were landmarking the property. So he knows the property well. He's taking good care of it.
Still
I have
learning about
one-
it every day, I'll tell you. It's,
So much to learn
there's a
there.
lot to learn.
I have one more question, if I could.
course.
I was wondering if you're using the State Historic Building Code at all in the work you're doing at the property.
I don't think there's any reason that we have to use it.
Okay,
We're just doing some straight up alterations inside, which would be the structural code.
okay. Well, I just wanted you to be aware that that is available to you.
Yes.
If you find something tricky that may not, like, for example, on those windows, sometimes people think that they have to upgrade them to dual pane and all that, but the building code allows you to keep
Oh,
them.
that's a good point. then.
stored.
Yeah, we'll just stay single pane.
So if you're told you need to upgrade it to the current standards, you might not have to if you check that out.
That would be good. Okay, thank you for that.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Any further discussion amongst the commissioners? Any questions?
I would just ask, because this is just an example of a property where the Secretary of the Interior standards are so important. That's the standard, as Stephen said, that we need to measure, particularly with these Mills Act properties. It's written right into the law that any work has to be consistent with the Secretary of the Interior standards. And also, it's being granted an exemption from CEQA based on its historic renovation, and that requires that it follow all the standards. So I'm just wondering if, in the future, if we could get in our packets a copy of the standards so that we would have those to refer to in looking at the property and whether or not we feel it measures up to the standards, and then possibly even have a brief discussion of each standard by the city staff. I know when I was on the commission before, we would actually get letters from professional historians that would go through the standards and say, it meets this one, it meets this one, it has a problem with this one. And I just feel that might be a little more helpful. This project, I think, is a kind of obvious. I think so. I think it's something that we can just make that decision on, but I think for the future it would be helpful.
Yep, no, I think so too, and educational to us, new and old. Great, thank you. Okay, so do I hear a motion to approve this?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay, second?
I move to second.
Okay, any further discussion? Sherry, roll call, please.
Akins,
Yes,
Basacha,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
great, thank you all. And thank you, gentlemen. Okay, item number 3, gosh, no public comments. Item number 3, a discussion item. Mara, staff report, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair Akins. This item, number 3, is a suggested change of the meeting time for the HPC from the current 5 o'clock to be at 6 o'clock, which would match the time of the other commissions and also the city council. And I believe that there have been some comments that you were going to read from Commissioner or Vice Chair McCatton, but if not necessary, we did provide those comments out on the dais. Staff is recommending approval of this change, and if you want to discuss it or have any questions.
I have a question.
Sure, go right
Um,
ahead.
I'm in favor of the time change, but why was it changed to 5 o'clock originally? Because it used to be 6.
When I came on here, it was 5 o'clock, so I don't know why it was
Does
changed to
anyone
5.
sitting on the commission now know why?
I think there were a lot more older people on the commission at that time, and they might have just preferred a earlier.
Older than who?
Nowadays, me. Yeah, that could well be it. And, but I don't know. I've been around a while.
Just curious.
From Commissioner McCatton, she sent me a note that said, okay to read that into the record?
Sure, I'm sorry, I thought that prior to the meeting, you asked Sherry to print out.
That was just the long
McCatton's-
one. That was this.
Oh, okay.
This is one sentence.
Oh, okay, not necessary. I can just say that I know that Vice Chair McCatton is in favor of this. In fact, she's the one that brought it up at the last meeting to request that we change the meeting time. I think it was she, to change the meeting time from 5 to 6. Anyway,
Absolutely.
it's not necessary.
Okay. And the other thing, in talking with Lauren earlier, we were talking, and she was asking the same thing and suggested also that that will open it up to several other people who are unable to leave work early and racing home at 5 o'clock. So, any questions, any discussion, any further questions or discussions? Motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay, Sherry?
Akins,
Yes.
Sasha,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Great, thank you all. Okay, we are moving to item number 4. We do have a public comment on that. Mr. Schaefer?
Can I wait till after the staff report?
Good question.
Sure, yeah, usually
Yeah,
it's a comment about this item, so I'll present that and then he can,
sure,
right?
absolutely. So we will rearrange the schedule and go with staff report and then open it to public comment.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I don't think it was a public comment, I think it was a comment about the item.
Oh, well, yes, sorry, it's a public
Comment about
member.
the item, right, right. Well, staff's report or presentation is very short. This is an opportunity for an ad hoc committee's report to any updates regarding the Ojai Civic Center Historic District, renaming. And actually, it was at the last meeting, November 9th, that the Vice Chair McCatton reported that the ad hoc committee, she and Commissioner Craig Walker decided to present a name change from the local downtown historic district to the Ojai Civic Center Historic District. And tonight is an opportunity for a review and update. And we don't have Vice Chair McCatton, but perhaps Commissioner Walker has an update. If not, that's absolutely fine. And if we have some comments from the public, or if you want to have any kind of discussion, I'll open that up.
Okay, any questions for the staff report? Gotta ask. Okay, comments from the public. Mr. Schaefer.
Yeah,
welcome.
sorry. Well, without a lot of detail, just for the public who I guess are watching, the San Buenaventura Conservancy has been made sort of aware that the downtown is actually on the California Register. I'm not sure exactly, but it was placed on the California Register through the analysis of a group of historic preservation professionals who were hired by Caltrans when Caltrans was doing a project, and you probably know all this. But basically, the downtown district, which is the heart and soul of Ojai, and has always been a sort of a preservation project for Ojai for years and years, and decades, is something that the Conservancy would be very interested in helping with and partnering with. And we're also very much in support of possibly taking it to another level, which would be to list the downtown on the National Register of Historic Places. So if there is interest in that, it is definitely something that would actually benefit the people who have ownership in that district. They would be able to use the California State Historic Building Code on contributors. They would be able to get 25% historic preservation tax credits without having to make their individual properties into actual individual landmarks. So the preservation tax credit in a National Register recognized district is really one of the main ways to actually financially support and have a grant or tax credit system that benefits property owners. It's a great way to recognize the downtown nationally, but also to give something back to the actual property owners at the same time. So some of that work, if not most of that work, is already done, and we could possibly help put pieces together to continue that. So keep us informed and let us know if there's any interest in that. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will tell you, Mr. Schaefer, that it was a good 2 or 2.5 years before the city knew that it was a downtown historic district. And it has yet to be acknowledged by the city. So interesting things. And we, as this states, we have been working, we had an ad hoc committee that had Craig Walker, myself, and Gina, so working on this for a while now. But thank you for your offer. Great information, and be happy to ask you for your support and for your guidance. Commissioner McCatton didn't have any comments or any updates for tonight. So, do we do anything? What are we going to motion to accept your staff report, or?
There was not even a report from the ad hoc committee, and so you don't need to take any kind of vote on my, no.
So we don't need to do anything?
You don't need to do anything further. We can move on to item number 5 when you're ready.
Okay, that's new. Sure. Moving along. Thank you. Okay. We will close item number 4. Move along to item number 5. Item number 5 is regarding the historic preservation regulations, which may require California Environmental Quality Act consideration and structures of merit list discussion. And this is why Thais is here tonight, to be one of our assistants. So staff report, please, Mara.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to briefly open this up, and then I'm going to turn it over to our assistant city attorney. I'm going to start off with the recommendations, which is always at the top of your staff report, but it's usually not put out there until the end. The recommendation is to receive information that's presented to you this evening from staff and from, actually, assistant city attorney is also staff. And that's regarding the CEQA and the structures of merit in the information that's provided to you in your staff report this evening, and to discuss and take comment on anything that is presented this evening, specifically structures of merit, which I'm assuming some of the people in the audience are here for, and to reconsider or consider reevaluating the current list of potential structures of merit, which has been suggested to you in the past recently by staff. And an alternative recommendation would be to not take an action on the structures of merit, proposed structures of merit list, and conduct further research on the matter. So this evening, it's kind of 2 parts here. One is the California Environmental Quality Act, and I'll be putting up a PowerPoint provided when it's presented, but provided by the assistant city attorney. And then also what's in your staff report is essentially the same staff report. I don't believe there's any alteration since you received it in the last meeting, and that is regarding structures of merit and regarding specifically structures of merit regarding structures of worship or houses of worship, structures of merit and their tax benefits, structures of merit and the historic building code, and structures of merit and opting out. And again, I want to repeat that the staff report, I don't believe has been revised in those categories. The commission wanted to hear the information from this attorney's office and not simply from staff. And something else, the other part of the report regarding CEQA is something that has been requested by the commission previously. And so we're taking this opportunity to just combine that with the structures of merit discussion. I want to say that we received, and the attorney's office as well as the HPC has received it before the meeting, was a letter from the Crotona Institute. And that would be regarding opting out. So I just want to make that public that we received that letter. And it is on our website for public viewing. And I think with that, it's appropriate to turn it over to Thais. But if you have any questions of me, of course, I'm available.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Getting the PowerPoint up.
Oh,
on the
yeah,
screen.
no, that's okay. So while we're doing that, I just wanted to remind folks that this has actually been brought to us. This is the third time that it's been brought to us and then taken forward to the city council, who basically punted it. Commissioner Walker, I joined the HPC. My first meeting was September 14th, 2014. And in that meeting, Commissioner Walker and Commissioner Terry Hill were presenting on the downtown, on the structures of merit. So we are working through the questions, the concerns, the suggestions, and getting that information from the sources that are important, whether it's from the internal city staff and internal city attorney. That's what Thais was brought in at the request at our last meeting to answer questions and provide guidance. And so this is often is not a process that where people get called in each time or notified each time. Many times there's an ad hoc formed, and some of this discussion takes place before they come forward, or questions get answered, before they come forward for a recommendation. But we are trying to do everything as open and as clear, and to take all questions and information, suggestions sent to us, and get answers, and then provide those answers to the folks that are impacted by this. That's the property owners. So this is a long process that sometimes has starts and stops, but we are trying to find the best way to handle this fairly, and trying to get all of the information out to the individuals and respond to them. So we are happy to always have somebody here. Oftentimes it's quite lonely. So nothing too interesting. So anyway, we're happy to have you here. We're always open to questions. If you think of something that comes up after this meeting tonight, please direct your questions to Mara Macaluso. She is our senior planner staff support person. And in case you're wondering who that is, that's the voice. Sherry Herbrick. Thank you, Sherry. So it's a process that we're trying to get right and get finished and get concluded in this round, rather than wait another several number of years to address it again. How are we doing over there?
We've got the PowerPoint figured out.
Sweet.
It's up there. All right. So, so I'll be talking through the CEQA application to historic structures and to the structures of merit. You can go to the next slide. All right. So CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act. It is a state law that requires public agencies to consider potentially significant environmental impacts of projects. And so public agencies must comply with CEQA before making a discretionary approval of a project. Discretionary projects are those that require the exercise of judgment or deliberation, as opposed to ministerial projects, which just require a mere determination of whether there has been compliance with applicable laws or standards. And so the key question of whether CEQA will apply to a project is whether the public agency may use its subjective judgment to decide whether and how to carry out or approve a project. And even approvals that ordinarily are ministerial, such as building permits, can become subject to CEQA if the city in effect exercises discretionary control over the project. So whether something is discretionary is very fact specific to the project. Thank you.
Could I ask a quick question? Could you define ministerial?
Yes, so
For us?
ministerial is the opposite of discretionary. It's when the agency making the approval has a specific set of standards and is just applying the project, whatever it may be, the building permit, to those standards that it has set out. And there's no subjective interpretation by the public agency.
Great, thank you.
So the legislature has exempted certain types of projects from CEQA. One of those is the historical resource restoration and rehabilitation exemption, and that exempts from CEQA projects limited to the maintenance, repair, stabilization, rehabilitation, restoration, preservation, conservation, or reconstruction of historical resources. But that work has to be in a manner consistent with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. So, for example, demolition is never consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards, so a project for demolition would not be exempt from CEQA. A historical resource under CEQA, the definition that would make the CEQA exemption apply, is 1, a resource listed in or determined to be eligible for listing in the California Register of Historical Resources. 2, a resource included in a local register of historical resources, which is defined as a list of properties officially designated or recognized as historically significant by a local government pursuant to ordinance or resolution. And we interpret this to be a landmark in the city of Ojai. This definition of historical resource applies unless the preponderance of the evidence demonstrates that the resource is not historically or culturally significant. And lastly, a historical resource is a resource which the agency has determined at any point in the CEQA process that it is a historical resource. That one is very open-ended.
Can I ask you a question? Why does the city only consider a landmark a historic resource?
That is because the second definition of a historical resource under CEQA states that a local register of historical resource is a list of properties officially designated or recognized as historically significant, and that matches up with the landmark definition in the Ojai Municipal Code.
But Ojai has 3 categories of historic properties. It has landmarks, structures of merit, and points of historical interest.
see landmarks as the more, I guess, defined or less, more of a designation than the historical places and structures of merit, which is a more casual listing of historical importance in the city.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. And CEQA does have an exception to the historical resource exemption, which is when a project may cause a substantial adverse change in the significance of the historical resource. At that point, it is a project that may have a significant effect on the environment that must go through CEQA, even though it might be the project might be regarding a historical resource under CEQA.
So does that only apply to landmarks, or does it apply to any historic?
It would apply, so going back to the previous slide, a historical resource are those listed there. And for the second one, that's the one that we're saying is a landmark only. And then the exception would be an exception to those exemptions.
And why do you not consider a property named in a historic resource survey to be a historic resource?
As a historic resource survey conducted by the city?
Right. We've had a couple of surveys over the years that were conducted by the city, and would those, if they were listed as Category 1 historic properties, would those be historic resources?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look closer at how the city goes through the survey and how the categories are implemented. So I'd have to look at that in further detail.
And what about the fair argument standard, which is very low bar? It seems to me you're setting a high bar of being a landmark, but some of these others are a little lower bar that still identify these are potential historic properties, and yet for some reason they don't seem to be evaluated under CEQA either as a exemption or as an exception to one of the other exemptions.
So I don't know about this fair argument, but I will point out that one of the ways that CEQA allows a resource to be a historical resource is if the reviewing agency, so the city that's undergoing CEQA, determines that it is a historical resource. So that part of the definition of historic resource is very broad.
But I guess my question is that how does, in the initial study that's done for an EIR, for the environmental review, how does a property get over that fair argument standard? How does it get recognized as a historic resource by the city when it may not be listed as a landmark?
Yes, so the exemption would kick in before the initial study is even conducted, because the initial study is part of the CEQA process. So the exemption for a historical resource would exempt that resource from any part of the CEQA. And if the city wanted to exempt a resource that it found to be historical but was not listed in any register, or not listed as a landmark, not listed as a structure of merit, it could still do so under that third definition, which is very broad, a resource that the agency determines is a historical resource.
But I guess my question is, how does that happen? Because these properties aren't brought before us for an opinion. They're just, somehow they're granted some exemption and not listed as historic. And it was our understanding that CEQA was meant to give the public and decision makers an opportunity to look at the facts about the situation. And if we have a property like, I don't know, any one of them that's on the survey or the sites of merit list, if a project came up for one of those, how would that property get referred to us to make a decision about whether it is a historic resource or not, if it's not a landmark?
I see your question. I think that, well, I'd have to look further at the Ojai Municipal Code, but it may be diverted to the HPC for determination that under CEQA it is a historical resource.
Well, that would be nice, but I don't think that happens.
I'm not sure if I'm following along exactly, so you'll let me know if I'm not. But if there's a list, like the Structures of Merit list, for instance, and it has been adopted, then the structures that are on there, when they're proposed to be altered, they would come before the HPC. But if it's not adopted, then it's not going to come before the HPC. And so what I'm addressing right now is Commissioner Walker's question about how does something get here. So if it's on a list that's been adopted, it gets here. Or of course, if it's a landmarked, then it would come here. But if it's not been been adopted, then it doesn't, it's not required to come here.
But I'm not sure that's right, because there was a legal case, the League of Protection versus the City of Oakland, in which the courts ruled that all that is necessary to show a structure as a historic resource that may be adversely impacted, triggering a CEQA review, is a fair argument supported by evidence. It doesn't have to be adopted. And in fact, they said at the time, if the judge said if historical resources were limited to properties actually listed, owner resistance to inclusion or mere government inaction might forestall preparation of an EIR for a worthy structure, a result certainly not sanctioned by CEQA. So the idea that it has to be approved, because the city doesn't make the resource historic. It is historic. It's historic because it meets the criteria and because it's been identified in various books and in the story of the community. And but yet the city has resisted for 13 years adopting that survey that was taken and the list that we made of the priority sites. They just, I don't know if it's the council or if no one has put it on their agenda or what, but all we have is our landmarks, right? Those are the only ones that seem to make it to us. We don't, and that wasn't always the way it was when I was on the commission back in 2013 and so forth. We used to get every meeting or every couple of meetings, we'd get a historic report on a building that was wanting to make a change, an alteration or something, and they would submit that to us and we would review it and we would comment on it, and those comments would go back to the planning commission. But we don't get those anymore.
We got an example today from the Crotona Institute. I think it was 2016 that they were requesting to make an alteration. I'm going to simplify this. They were requesting to make an alteration, and it was and they were on potentially a survey list, and they were required to have a historic resources report prepared in order to do their alteration. And so that might be something that you're talking about that happened previously, and they are one today that are submitting a letter saying that it's a burden to be stopped and having to do a historic resource survey in order to, to do an alteration, which I know is not what our code says that structures of merit, if that list were adopted, would have to do today. But back in 2016, we're talking about a list that was not adopted. And those projects still came before the HPC. And in that particular instance, they were required to do a historic resources report.
But isn't that what they should do? If it is a historic resource and they
But
want
it
to...
was not a designated historic resource.
What?
It was not a designated historic resource. It was on
But
a,
according to the attorney, it doesn't have to be a designated resource.
I beg to differ. I think in what she was saying is that it does have to be a designated historic resource.
That's
And
not what she said, right?
Okay, well, I'll turn it over to to the attorney.
Can I jump in here real quick? So, the fact that, or what Craig said was that some items that were an example of an item that came before us actually ended up being demolished, but it came first to the Planning Commission, who were the ones who requested a historic resources report. That's the Olive Mill House. And they basically gave it the permission to go ahead. That historic resources report had not come before the HPC. That project had not come before the HPC. So even back then, there were requirements that weren't in place, that are in place now, that inaction still took place. I read through the through the information that was provided to us by Crotona, and saw that she had, again, 2016, had referred to the structures of merit list. That was at times, I mean, people have called me, said, hey, they're going to do this. What's going on? And so I will call and check and find out that that item is not on any list. I think there has been some, and my question too was, why was that done when the structures of merit list was only a list? It had not been officially recognized. It still hasn't been officially recognized. So that's our question here.
But I might be able to answer that because I think the rules, as pointed out in the case that I quoted, say that all that has to be made is a fair argument, which is that all you have to do is present enough evidence to make the case that this is a potential historic property. It doesn't matter if it's approved by the council or not. It doesn't even matter if it was in that list. It could just be a citizen showing up at a meeting and saying, that property, look, it's in the Ojai history book, that property is historic, and that would be enough to trigger looking into it as a possible historic resource, because the point of it would be as if, one of the things that they look at in CEQA is water quality and water pollution. So it would be like the city saying, we don't have a list of our rivers, so we don't have to evaluate the impact of this factory on the water. There's either a river there or there isn't. There's either a historic building there or there's not, and it doesn't require approval, I don't think. I mean, maybe Steve can comment on that, but.
So let's get back. I'd like to get back to the staff report, because again, now we're starting to diverge into discussion items, and we're referencing items that aren't a part of the package that we have tonight. Therefore, I'm not sure how much credence that and weight that gives to the meeting as
All right, well,
informative
thank you
as
for the
it might be.
diversion. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, yes. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thais, back to you.
Thank you very much. So we can go on to the next one. All right. So we talked about exemptions to the CEQA and exception to the exemption to the CEQA. And now we'll turn our attention to structure of merit in Ojai. under the municipal code, it is an individual structure designated by the council upon recommendation by the HPC of historic, architectural, community, or aesthetic merit, which has not been designated as a landmark or point of historical interest, but which is deserving of being added to a council-approved special recognition list. And the commission can also recommend historic structures in the city which have been officially designated by agencies of the state or federal government. And I'll just also add the definitions of a landmark and a point of historical interest so we can see what a structure of merit is by process of elimination. A landmark is a building, structure, object, site, or district designated as a landmark by resolution of the council that is worthy of rehabilitation, restoration, reconstruction, or preservation because of its historic, architectural, cultural, and natural significance to the city. And a point of historical interest is the site of a building, structure, or object which no longer exists, but which was associated with historic events or important persons, or embodied a distinctive character or architectural style, or has historic significance, but has been altered to the extent that the integrity of the original workmanship, materials, or style has been substantially compromised. Right, and we'll move on to, this is our last slide, that where we talk about whether structures of merit are exempt from CEQA. And it can be, they can be. The structure of merit can be exempted from CEQA if it's a landmark or has been determined during the CEQA process to be a historical resource. But that also depends on the work that's being done to the structure, because the project may still not be exempt if it doesn't follow the Secretary of Interior standards, or if the work can cause a substantial adverse change in the significance of the historical resource. And that's all. Yeah, that sounds good. Are there any questions?
Yes, questions for staff? Craig?
Yes, I do. Thank you. One of the questions I have is that Santa Barbara also has structures of merit, and their definition is very similar to our definition of what a structure of merit is. In that one, the Ojai definition is a structure of historic, architectural, community, or aesthetic merit which have not been designated as landmarks. And Santa Barbara's any structure, site, or feature having potential historic, architectural, archaeological, cultural, or aesthetic significance may be proposed and accepted as a structure of merit. And they have an on-site historian, a historical historian who's hired by the city who evaluates them. But ours were evaluated by the San Buenaventura Research Associates that put them into the category 1. So they've both been, on the survey anyway, they've both been evaluated, and then the HPC evaluated them further, vetted the priority sites, which became the structures of merit. And in their handout for the city of Santa Barbara under structure of merit designation, they talk about all the incentives that the people have to be on the list of, to be on the structure of merit list. They talk about the state and federal tax credit incentive, the Mills Act property tax benefit, the California State Historic Building Code, environmental benefits. So I know that they're not exactly the same, and in fact, the structures of merit actually have more requirements on the owners than ours does. All ours requires is that if they want to get a permit for demolition or for alteration, they have to appear before this group who comments on it. And they actually have, you can't do this or you can't do that. We don't have that for ours. So I think one of my questions that got me perplexed about the whole thing was that if it's okay for Santa Barbara to have these incentives for their structures of merit, what is different about ours? Because both are defined as a level of historic designation that's below a landmark. It's not a landmark, but it contributes to the story of the community. Like some of them that are on there, the Cortona or the Porch Gallery, that have incredible histories, and they really help to tell the story of our community. But for one reason or another, they're not up at that level of being a landmark. And this gives them the ability to be a structure of merit, but also have available some incentives so that they can restore their property or maintain it in a historic manner. So maybe you could, if you know anything about the Santa Barbara designation.
Yeah, I don't know
Okay.
about the Santa Barbara designation, but that's definitely something I can look into and email some information back to the commission if that's of interest.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes. This is questions to staff for their report.
I don't understand why it's not consistent throughout the state of California. Is that a silly question?
What do you mean, the structure
That
is
the standards
definition
aren't,
of?
the standards aren't the same. I mean, you have the city of Santa Barbara, you have the city of Pasadena, San Marino, I mean, on and on, that have many, many structures of merit and landmarks. It, to me, should be a consistency. Or is it just each city who makes its own rules? And if that's the case, can we change the rules?
There are national and state standards for historical resources, which are the same throughout the United States or of California. But yes, for local designations, it can differ by city by city, and it is something we can change through the city council. It would be an ordinance change to the code.
If the council wishes to do that.
Yes, all in the city council's hands.
Rick, do you have questions for staff?
I do not, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Can I just add something?
Of course.
So there are structures in the city that are state designated historic structures, or like the state designated downtown historic district. And so that's a state designation, and so there are it has to follow the same state regulations or guidelines or whatever as all other state designated historic districts. But if it's a city designation, then it would be based on our municipal code. Just like any other city, they would have their own requirements through their municipal code. But if it's a state designation, then it follows state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yet another example, as you know, president of the museum board is the museum as a national.
I don't think your microphone's on.
Thank you, Sherry. The museum is a national landmark, and so we understand that there are national requirements as well as local requirements. You know, just because we're a national, we don't get to, nor would we, since it's owned by the city. Thumb our nose at the city, but so.
Also state, because you're within the state
Absolutely.
district as well, so there's city, state, and.
Turn your microphone on.
For the museum, for instance,
Yes.
there are city, state, and national requirements. So,
Correct.
on that structure, on that building alone. So it
Correct.
just depends on where a structure or district has been designated as to what laws and requirements that get followed.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so let's open comments by the public. We could. And so, I would, Mr. Orsland? John?
Yes.
You have a speaker's card for item number 5?
Yeah, do you want me to come up to the podium?
Please. So,
And
and yes, so 3 minutes. We have a clock over here with Mara.
Okay, 3 minutes. Well, I'll tell you, very good questions, but they weren't answered, your questions at all. Very good. I am more confused tonight about all this than ever before after this. I guess I'll just talk about the house there that you say is a merit and stuff like that. This is the book of advertising or whatever that they had, and the outline of the house that you say up there and stuff like that is completely different than their thing, because they have over here a garage and they have that. And that area was when we got it, the swimming pool, and a lot of that burnt down and stuff. And I gave you those pictures, and I know I only got 3 minutes here. And they talk about a pool. Well, that is a pond. This pool is not in their picture. What they have there, they have a garage and something else. And this pool is in the garage area. And all that area that they had there, that is on the other side of that, and that's all burnt off, burnt down. It isn't there. And on the right side of this thing, it shows an entryway going up into the house, stairs and stuff. But the entry now, they have over here, like it was on the outside or whatever, that area has been all covered and the wall taken down inside. And then that has an entry there where you come in and you come around there. Then the other side and stuff like that, where that garage is with the pool, but the garage is, they have a big garage over here when you drive in and stuff. But then there's a walkway and they have an entry on that side, then that goes into the kitchen and stuff like that. And then here where the bathroom or the study room, that's not that way. The bathrooms are changed. But I'm just saying that if I'm supposed to have this an antique or it's supposed to be a historical place, it isn't like this. The diagram here that they have, this picture this showing, is not the way the house is inside. And we didn't do nothing to the house, and I'm not gonna do nothing to the house. You know, Joyce, 40 years ago, it was built in 50, and maybe, I don't know. I've been there, Joyce and I've been married 25 years, and I've been there in Santa Monica and whatever, but that's been the main house there. But we didn't build nothing. I'm never gonna build anything on that. And our thing was because of all the animals and stuff like that, and we were going to have it like you drive around Ojai and you see down by Bonds or something like that, a preserve and stuff like that. And that was never going to be touched, you know, because there's every kind of animal is there, every kind there. But I'm going to have to get a lawyer to listen to everything that was said here to understand what's going on, because this is something else. Is this a landmark? Is this a historical house? Is this a what or whatever it is? I mean, and there's so many different definitions. You're great questions, but when you're out here, it's pretty depth, and I don't think you got the answers, but that's beside the point. Thank you very much, but I'm not for this making a historical place, because then I'm screwed or whatever, because it probably can't be it and put a fence around it and whatever. But I'm not doing nothing to it. What am I supposed to do, fix this all up? to be
We
historic?
we understand that, Mr. Orson, so,
I'm sorry.
no.
Don't worry.
But I really thought I was gonna tell you people this and explain things and stuff like that.
I appreciate you bringing the pictures and the information
But
to us.
I have no idea what you have here. What is, this is a
So that's what we're talking about. We're going to talk about it some more after we finish with public comments. So I would like Reverend James Vorel. Vorel.
We think that's how it's pronounced. I would just like to make one last comment when he's walking up there. We never touched it, and I don't ever want it ever to be touched and stuff. I'm not gonna, like, let that burnt up. We're not building something else and stuff like that.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that comment.
I addressed a letter to the committee and delivered it here a couple days ago, hand-delivered it to the front desk, and she was going to hand it to you, Maura. I don't know if that happened. So the letter says, and it's addressed to you and to the city council and to the city attorney. It says, the Church of Our Lady and All Angels declares that it will be harmed financially by being designated a structure of merit by the city of Ojai. Restoring a 100-year-old building constructed mainly of redwood to its original condition is beyond our reach financially, especially if a historical survey is required. According to the California Supreme Court decision in December of 2000, churches claiming such financial damage are exempt from all preservation regulations enacted by the city and county governments. The High Court, I'm quoting the article that appeared in the LA Times, the state High Court upheld a state law that permits religious organizations to declare their non-commercial buildings exempt from city and county preservation laws. Such buildings would include not only churches, but also housing, schools, hospitals, gymnasiums, and other structures used for religious or charitable purposes. And I gave the citation of the article, and it also referred to I don't know what that is, S077396. It's a citation in the state Supreme Court law. Based on this ruling of the Supreme Court, Our Lady and All Angels reserves its right to be exempt from any and all regulations, restrictions, or other requirements of structures of merit, and formally request that its name be withdrawn from the list of structures of merit and removed from the city's website. Thank you.
Remind me again which structure we're talking about here?
This is it's a structure we have two buildings on our site, and this is
Liberal Catholic
Yeah,
Church?
the Liberal Catholic
Okay,
Church,
just wanted to make
1502
sure,
East
so-
Ojai Avenue.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a building that was actually constructed in Miners Oak
Mhm.
and moved on a flatbed truck from Miners Oak to where it is now. In the 1940s, it was moved. It was original church building. It's not primarily a church building now. I mean, we use it for that. We have services there occasionally, but very rarely now. But anyway, so
Great.
Thank you.
that's our spiel. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Mhm.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Schaefer, you're up.
Thank you. Lots of interesting topics. I will start, again, Steve Schaefer from the San Buenaventura Conservancy for Preservation. I was also, for the last 14 years, on the Cultural Heritage Board for the County of Ventura. And the County of Ventura had a similar situation in that we had structures of merit and certificates of appropriateness and many things that Ms. Sims, you alluded to. It's like, why aren't they all the same? And the reason they're not all the same is because all cities get to do their own ordinances, and over the years, those ordinances have been very specific to cities. Some cities have been very protective. Other cities have wanted to, say, hey, this rock is historic, so we're going to make this rock historic. How do we do that? But the county has now had an ordinance update so that its policies mirror the state. The city of Ventura has had an ordinance update so that its policies mirror the state. And the reason is people get very nervous when you say things like structures of merit, and the definitions are hard to find. And you know, and that's true. The structures of merit is, what does that mean? Is the big question that I'm hearing. And churches are generally exempt, so whether they're on the list or not shouldn't matter, because in the state of California, case law for churches is that they are exempt. But you have a list now that the city financed, and that was done with professionals. And as Mr. Walker intimated, it is basically a list, and everything on that list that is over a certain age and historic is meeting that fair argument standard. And so what the city can do with a list that isn't adopted is they can ignore the list and say, well, we're not going to make anything specifically historic, which means that because the list exists and you can look at it and say, look, somebody said this is historic, it puts the city in a position where they're now potentially up for a lawsuit, because CEQA says if you can make a fair argument that something is historic and the city has basically given you the data to do that, the city should be using that data. If they don't adopt the list, they're just putting themselves in a situation where they may make decisions and say something isn't historic. If it's on the list, it should be. So I would be very nervous about that. I will reiterate Mr. Walker's citation of the Oakland case, where basically it was about a big Montgomery Ward building. The Montgomery Ward building was not listed on any historic register, but there was a fair argument that it was a historic resource, and that's the key. So that list is very important, and you should be using it whether it's adopted or not. Thank you.
Could I get you to come back up? So, I do. So, in a few minutes, if possible, could you explain to us more what the fair argument is? Because I don't know that
The
we've
fair
ever
argument standards is,
mentioned that here.
yeah, it's a standard in CEQA that basically, well, a general standard, but in CEQA it means that if there's a fair argument that something is historic, you have to the city has to approach that building and its review as if it is historic until it is found not to be. So Los Robles Hotel, for instance, some people thought it was historic, some people didn't. You had to at least look at it as potentially historic and then determine, I think what was determined is it was heavily altered and things had changed, and it was no longer what it used to be, and therefore the project can move on without being historic. I might have that wrong. Other projects that you might come across in downtown are a building that is on that California Register Historic District of Downtown, where if somebody wanted to do a project and put a second story on a thing, Rain's department store, I don't know how you would do that, but let's just say, you would want to approach that and say, well, there's a fair argument because the California Register has it. It doesn't need to be a city landmark. So we better run CEQA as if it's a historic resources. And many cities approach old buildings that are over a 50-year threshold, definitely that are over a 100-year threshold, as just presumed to be historic. We'll have a historic resource evaluation done by a consultant. That's what's happening on every single property in the city of Ventura right now, because they're doing a citywide historic survey to get a baseline. But until they have that baseline, they basically have to hire somebody every time there's a project that comes in over 50 years old and say, is this a historic resource? And that consultant looks at it and they issue their professional opinion. They say yes or no. If it's yes, it goes to the Historic Preservation Committee. If it's no, it moves through the regular ministerial or discretionary process otherwise. So the fair argument just says that if you can point out something is historic, like, you know, it's in the Neutra book, so that Neutra should be historic, or it's in this history of Ojai book, but it's not on any survey, that's a pretty good example of a fair argument. The other approach to a fair argument would actually be have a historic consultant do an initial evaluation. That's a safe way, because you don't have an adopted survey. If you don't do that, you could definitely get yourself into trouble. So, does that answer your question? Pretty
Yes,
much? Okay.
yes, thank you very much.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask him a question? This isn't a history book. This is, this is advertised.
Need to come to the dais.
Can I get you to, yeah, yes, thank you. The bigger issue, and you're asking him questions is you're away from the microphone and people can't hear. And people wonder why. Okay, so I don't have any other public comments cards. Are there any others that wish to speak and didn't fill out a card?
Put their cards in there.
Cards where? Oh, over here? Sorry. These were handed to me, so. Thank you. Looks like we have 2 more cards. Thank you, Mara. And they're both for item number 5. Elena Doval Santos. Thank you for the information you shared with us. If you'd state your name and again, what property you may be representing if you are.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I am speaking for the Crotona Institute of Theosophy, also called Crotona. I'm Elena Doval Santos. I am a VP of Crotona and resident head. So Government Code 37361 says that as a religious organization, we can be exempt from structure of merit designation if we object and if we make a public determination that designation will be a hardship. So the purpose of this public forum presentation is to state once again our objection to being designated as a structure of merit and to put on public record Crotona's determination that it will suffer substantial hardship from the designation, which is likely to deprive it of economic return on its property or the reasonable use of its property. This determination by Crotona is based in part on the express statements of the Commission's letter and City of Ordinance 893 that requires extensive reviews before any permit is given for demolition or alteration of a structure of merit. That demolition by neglect will not be allowed, or that repairs of structures of merit will need to be forwarded to the Community Development Director and possibly the HPC. All of these add complications, delays, and costs, and therefore hardship, which Crotona has already experienced firsthand. Crotona's treasurer will be speaking next, will cite specific examples that demonstrate the hardships with the designation, associated with the designation. The 2009 Court of Appeals ruling on exemption of religious properties from historical preservation laws states that any significant financial burden or simply the inability to demolish or alter a structure that is no longer suited to the needs of the owner could affect the ability of many owners to carry out their religious mission. Thus, the appellate court said that substantial hardship is met even just by the conditions established by the city on a structure of merit. The court further stated that the city lacks jurisdiction to subject religious property to local preservation ordinances. Simply as a matter of common sense, then, said the court, there is no point in pursuing designation if the city is prohibited from imposing any restrictions on the use or demolition of its property.
Great, thank you. I have a question for you. So we got a copy of your letter, a copy of the court case that you I'm guessing summarized. I'm not an attorney, so I didn't look at it. Busy afternoon. But I did look at the Historic Resources report. I did look at the conclusion that's on the last page that you call out in your letter on not meeting any of the criteria listed in the California Register of Historic Resources. Can you tell me who paid for the Historic Resources report?
Who paid for it?
Uh-huh.
We paid for it.
Okay. Okay, I'm just asking.
Yes.
Who pays for it is kind of a interesting thing here. If somebody requests their property be landmarked, then the owner pays for it. That's not the case here. I'm just relating to what happens. If the city goes to landmark a property, then the city pays for that. So that's why I was asking. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, and in fact, I would just like to add, if I would be allowed to, that recently we had consulted an architect about a possible alteration of a building that needs to be enlarged for a new purpose, and we were told that such a study now would cost maybe $4,000 for one building alone.
They can be expensive. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Next up is, where'd it go? There we go. Not there, not there, not there. I had another one. There we go. Sorry. Guru Prasad. Again, your name and the property that you're associated with, please.
My name is Guru Prasad. I am the treasurer of Crotona Institute of Theosophy. Good evening. Below are examples of hardships that Crotona has determined would result from the structure of merit designation. We will be unable to develop our property for new use, to generate income, or to further our mission if alteration or demolition is involved. 2. Increased tourism resulting from a historical designation will spoil the special atmosphere that makes Crotona what it is and will be counterproductive to our work. Number 3, replacement of fixtures such as custom windows to maintain a historical look will cost several thousands of dollars more for each structure. We have 30 structures. City of Ojai Ordinance 893 states that even alteration of interior elements may require approval. Additionally, an application for a major work permit will require a historic resources report, which could cost thousands of dollars for one building alone. Such a report was required of us when one building simply needed new windows. Number 5, delays for permits and reviews could result in safety issues, worsen damage, and increase costs. Number 6, over time, costs to prevent demolition due to neglect will skyrocket, requiring diversion of resources from our mission. Number 7, imposing preservation restrictions without access to any grants or other assistance represents a significant financial burden. Number 8, it has already been established by the courts that historical preservation restrictions on even one building constitutes a hardship. As mentioned, we have 30 buildings, many of which do not even have historical or architectural merit. Given the hardship determination above and Crotona's expressed objection to structure of merit designation, we once again state that the City of Ojai has no jurisdiction to impose any historic preservation ordinances to Crotona, which is a 501c3 nonprofit religious organization. The City of Ojai is bound by the laws of the state as described in court rulings and California Code 37361. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other cards in the box? No.
One more point of clarification, if you'll grant me a minute.
Is that Mr. Schaefer? Not usually, but
Based on their comments, just as a point of order, there seems to be a belief by everybody, and this is something that you probably should move forward on.
does this regard the religious?
No, it actually regards the entire thing. Is that I've heard now multiple times that there is a belief that the structure of merit is a designation. Full stop. And it's not really a designation. A survey is an identification tool. And if you are just identifying things and the public thinks you're designating things, you should probably look at that as your disconnect.
Okay. Okay.
Could I add
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer.
comment? Could I add one comment at the voting? Could I add a comment?
Is it going to be really quick?
Yes.
Okay, really quick, because we need to move on. I do not want to be here till 9 o'clock like the
Number
last
one, I
time.
want to apologize for talking out of turn over there and stuff like that. But when a person comes up to the podium and he points to me and he says that what I have is something like that, I answered him. And that is what it was. And that is not a history book.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank
And I apologize for interrupting like that.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So, I would, since we've mentioned the religious exemption that has been brought up, I know that Mara has discussed that, this also, and updated us from the initial meeting when it was brought up. She provided guidance from that in the second meeting. Is there something that you might add, Thais?
I can go into kind of the background of this government code section 37361. It generally allows cities to impose on certain historical resources special conditions or regulations, including structures of merit. And so the section also exempts from this ability of cities to impose special conditions or regulations. Non-commercial property owned by any association or corporation that is religiously affiliated and not organized for private profit. If the association objects to the application of the special condition or regulation, and the association determines in a public forum like this that it will suffer substantial hardship. If those two things are met in a public forum, then the association's structure, the subject structure, is exempt from the special condition or regulation that the city imposes on historical properties.
Okay, and in looking at a structure of merit, as we may be suggesting, would it appear to you that we are placing requirements then upon the property that we're doing, rather than solely naming that property as a structure of merit without restrictions?
The structures of, if a resource is named a structure of merit, then there are special conditions that apply to it. I think it's a work permit. Any work permits have to go through the Historical Preservation Committee.
Actually, my understanding is if it's a structure of merit, then if there were an alteration being proposed, the director would make a determination as to whether or not the project would come before the Historic Preservation Commission, but it wouldn't be for a work permit, because that's a discretionary permit. It would be for comment. The only time that there would be a permit would be if it were to be demolished, or a request for demolition.
So
So
for
the
demolitions, there is a special condition
Right.
applied to a
Right.
structure of merit.
And the special condition, although not a discretionary condition or permit, the special condition would be that an alteration would need to be submitted to the Community Development Department, the director, and he would make a determination, and if it needed to come before the HPC, then it would be put on an agenda, the next agenda, available, and come before the commission. So it's a requirement, but it's not a discretionary action. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Mara, for that clarification on what takes place, because I saw something where it said that anything to do with a structure of merit always went to the Historic Preservation Commission, and that's not true. I think the only time where it must come before the HPC is if there was a demolition permit. I know it says alteration too, but.
Right, and again, it's not must, or it's or even shall, it's if the director determines that it shall. Right, so.
But that's not on a demolition.
So if it's not a demolition, it's up to the director whether or not it comes to the commission.
But if it is a
If it's demolition, then it will come to the commission.
Okay,
yes.
great. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, so now's the time for us, for the council or commission to talk, to ask questions. I just want to start with a couple things. One is, and Mark can give us some guidance. So we're talking tonight about things that, guidance and direction that is listed in the code. And we're talking about items that other entities, other cities are putting forward that we may want the code, or we may not want in the code, but that's not really before us tonight. We are discussing what's in the code. Now, we could, one of your alternatives was for us to basically not come to a conclusion tonight, but to do further homework going forward. I will tell you that as of December 28th, when the new code is officially in place, having been a month since it was declared November 28th, then we have the opportunity to add 2 more commissioners. The reason that's important is because that would enable us to have, even if we only added 1, to have 3 members in our ad hoc committee rather than 2, and just expand that a bit. So having more voices, I think, on things like this is helpful. But going back again to the question on what's in the code and what's not in the code. I think we're governed by what's in the code, and if we want to make changes to the code, I would suggest the forming of an ad hoc committee that could work on that, and then come back and make recommendations to the commission that we in turn could discuss and make recommendations to the city council.
Okay, so yeah, I wanted you to go further, which you just did, to make clear what you were kind of asking of me. And so it's not on the agenda tonight to discuss changes that you want to make to the code.
No.
What is on the agenda are these different categories to discuss regarding structures of merit, which we've only talked about one, which is, well, specifically, which is the structures of worship. And then we talked about CEQA. So yes, to talk about things that you might want to change in the code that are like what's in Santa Barbara or not, or whatever, would be on a future agenda. It would be requested by 2 of the members of the commission for me to put it on a future agenda.
Yes, or something that we could mention that and then appoint or put together an ad hoc committee that then could take that forward, rather than the situation I see is that we are, in this meeting, we are doing a lot of the work that could be done by an ad hoc committee meeting that could delve into the specifics of this, who would then come back and make a recommendation to us, similar to what we did for the Downtown Historic District, now renamed. And in that case, we wouldn't have to, that ad hoc can take questions. Anything that comes before you can be relayed to that ad hoc. But we don't need to send letters out to each individual person and hold them here for 2 hours or 4 hours. So I'm just trying to find a way where we can make progress to these detailed in the weeds type questions and discuss what we think would be maybe improvements going forward. I will say that the Santa Barbara thing, actually I discussed that with Mara several months ago. It is within their code for the structures of merit. And it is put as an item. It is put in place by they're similar to us as a recommendation of the council, or actually an appointment, or declaring that it is a structures of merit and then appealable to the city council. And then only the city council can create landmarks. But the structures of merit is specified in the code that it has essentially been raised to just a step below the landmark, and it clearly states what is the definition for a structures of merit, what is the definition for a landmark, and how is that recommendation different? But again, it's within the code. And as Commissioner Walker suggests, a lot of suggestions that he made in the early discussion that we had on the staff are, the code has not been looked at in detail for the structures of merit since forever.
16, I think.
Yeah, long time ago.
If you're talking about revising it, that's true. As far as it being researched in order to give you information about what's in the code today, it has been looked at.
Yes,
Right.
no, I agree
Right,
with
but
that
as far
completely.
as far as revising it, perhaps it's been since that time. And so as far as potential revisions or wanting to make revisions, proposing revisions, that would be for another agenda. That would not be for tonight. Tonight we're talking about today's code. As I'm just reiterating what you said and supporting what you said, that's what you're doing tonight. And there are still a couple other issues besides the structures of worship that the people that are here today may want to get clarification on. However, at this time, the structures of merit have not been adopted by the council, and in our code, they become structures. Right now, they're potential structures of merit. They become structures of merit once the list has been adopted. That's what our code says. So at this time, they are not structures of merit. They're proposed or desired structures of merit. So if you were to put this issue on hold and not forward it to the council right now, they would stay as a desired, proposed potential, but not actual structures of merit.
That's correct.
Right.
And again, it is our position, or in the code it says that we may make recommendations to the city council, not that we must make recommendations to the city council. And as you and I discussed in this question, if there's a list of, say, 35 properties and we recommend 15 of them to the city council, still that full list of the 35 properties would go to the city council so that they can make their own choices if they see something that they think would be worthy of being a structure of merit that we didn't recommend to them. So they would get the whole list if we were to move forward.
If you were to move forward with that list, then they would see the whole list of 35. If you were to revise your list, which has been a recommendation from staff,
Yes.
And I'm not saying that the list should be shorter or longer, I'm just saying that it should be current. But whatever the list is what this council would be looking at. So you would be moving forward with the list.
They would get the full list in spite of however many of those we made a recommendation to them.
But that would be the recommendation. The recommendation would be for that list. I don't see you sending forward a list of 35, but saying in words, we're only recommending 15, because you would be moving forward with the 35.
Okay.
I'm sorry if we had a conversation that sounded differently. It would, there would, what my understanding was is that the list of 35 would go forward, and then there would be in the staff report that X number of these people have objected to being on the list or don't want to be on the list, but this is the list. But
Okay, so you're saying that we would pare the list, we would be able to pare the initial list down to only our recommendations? That goes to the council?
If you wanted to revise that list, then
Well, you're saying that if we were making recommendations, we would revise that list to only our recommendations?
if you wanted to revise the list, it would just be the ones you're recommending, yes.
Okay,
But you wouldn't be recommending a different list because somebody said they don't want to be on the list. You'd be recommending a different list because you've gone out and done your due diligence.
That's the plus or minus from them. I'm just trying to nail down what the city council will get.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so, again, in the code is what we're discussing tonight. We can make a decision, a recommendation to go forward, and as a part of that going forward, I'm recommending ad hoc. When we rewrote the code, it was actually done with a ad hoc of the committee too. Craig was on that, I was on that, several other people were on that, as well as members of the city council. So, but tonight we're talking about what's in the code. Not what we might want the code to recommend. However, that is something that we could choose to pursue going forward in subsequent meetings or with an ad hoc committee.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Questions? Craig, do you want to start?
Okay. First of all, I want to assure those in the audience and those who may be watching that being even a landmark does not require you to do anything to your property. It doesn't require you to restore it. It doesn't require you to, it's only if you decide you want to change your property that then the change that you are proposing is looked at to see whether it violates the standards or whatever, or whether it can be worked within the standards. And there's some give and take on that, but there's nothing in there that says if your property were declared a structure of merit or even a landmark, that would mean you had to hire someone to upgrade it or to make it, to restore it. It doesn't mean that at all. We have a lot of landmarks where the owners have done nothing to them since they've become landmarks, and that's their option. It isn't meant to put that burden on them. So I just wanted to assure you that that wasn't part of it. And then another thing that came up was the difference between the state designation, and this just has to do with the downtown historic district, but as Brian so well pointed out, the state, unbeknownst to people in Ojai, declared downtown Ojai as a historic district, which meant the 28 properties that they had designated were now on the California Register and were subject to CEQA laws and CEQA review, and all the things that go along with being a state historic resource. What the commission has been trying to do is find out how can we change our own, to create a historic district at the local level that will be simpatico, will be aligned with that state. So there may be some properties that are historic, and it's no wonder you're confused. They are historic resources for the state, but they are not a historic resource for the city of Ojai because they haven't been named a downtown historic district by the city. So for that one property, the state might require that they be compatible with the Secretary of the Interior standards. The city may have its downtown arcade standards that apply to that very same building. So you can see how that could set up a situation where when the individual that owns the property goes in and tries to get a project done, they've got these two levels with different standards working. And our goal is to create one standard so that that the city standards and the state standards are together. So when someone comes in, they only have to deal with that one standard that goes along with that historic district that would be both the state and the city level. But I agree. I read Gina's letter, and I understand what you say. And your recommendation that we maybe study some of the properties further for integrity, I think that makes sense. Some of the things that I've heard expressed in these meetings leads me to believe that we could give a little more attention. We won't go into anything specifically, but that the language may need to be cleaned up and maybe focused a little more. So I'm all in favor of kind of bringing it back and forming this ad hoc committee and seeing where we are with that. But also the sort of elephant in the room here is the survey, because the survey was what gave rise to the structures of merit. There was a survey done, and at the time in 2012, the council said, you know what, can't you just create a priority list, a list of the truly historic properties that we should be aware of? And that was the birth of the structures of merit designation. So the commission, a much different group of people than is on it now, they were told by the council to create this designation that they could, that would be more usable by the city. But it still doesn't leave behind all the CEQA requirements, you know, with it that Stephen talked about, that there still is the CEQA law, and there still is an obligation by the city when they're doing a environmental quality review to not only review the affected lakes and air quality and parking and all of that, but it's written right into the law to also consider the historic nature of your community and the historic buildings. So we're trying to follow that law, and the only way we can do it, and the only way you as the public know what is historic, is if we bring those forward in a fair argument and say, this is historic. You know, we read the article in the Ojai Quarterly about Crotona, and we read about its history. We know the wonderful history that Crotona has. So when I read that article and I go and they're naming historic buildings and they leave Crotona out, I'm wondering, well, why would they do that when even the people at Crotona wrote this wonderful history about their organization and about their buildings? So anyway, I don't want to take too long, but I do favor the idea of our stepping back and kind of working this through, coming up with some recommendations for the commission.
Great question for you, since I love surveys. Love making sure they're in the museum. So as an attachment.
Is your microphone on?
Oops, sorry, I'm leaning back. The mic's on, I'm leaning back. So as an attachment to a document we received, there were 4 surveys that were attached to that. Can you just give insight to?
Well, there's the one that was done in 2011, which was the one done by San Buenaventura Research Associates. They researched like 3,000 parcels in the city of Ojai, and they've got every single parcel with their rating for it. And there was a team that went out and looked at all these buildings and made these decisions. So there was that one that's the most recent, and the city did use it. But then there's this one that was done by the commission. It's called Inventory of Potential Historic Buildings in the City of Ojai. And down here it says City of Ojai Community Development Department. And this was what was used when a CEQA, when there was a request for a demolition or for alteration. This is what the planner would turn to and would look up, and if the building was on there, then they felt, well, it's been studied and we should look into this. And so it was from these lists that these came to be known not only by the commission, but also by the general public who tune in, that the city is actually considering its historic resources. And I just don't see, after all that's been written and done about all these properties, that you can kind of unsee the historic nature of our town. That's just what we are. And so I think the city does have an obligation to review these properties, and if it wants to pass along the cost of the report to the landowner, that's one thing. Maybe they would want to do it themselves if it is, because it is a public benefit. It benefits the public. And so the city and the state has tried to give a lot of incentives to people, tax breaks, historic building code, other things, to really encourage them to carry out that preservation. So anyway, those are the only two I know of. There was one that I saw that was very rudimentary that was from like 1986. It's posted on the city's website. It's called the Initial Evaluation for CEQA or something like that. But they only list like 12 properties, you know. It was just, okay, let's get some buildings in there. But then, as you know, it's gone further with these other surveys.
So those surveys are, checking my light for Sherry. Those surveys are available to the public. Does the public have access to those? I believe, touting the museum here, I believe they're all in the museum too.
Yeah, they are in the files in the community development department. Everything we
great.
have is available to the public.
I just think, learning about the history of the town we're in is why I'm here.
I just said that. However, I'm going to retract it for a moment, only because I think I want to look into that, because since it wasn't adopted by the council, to my knowledge, that would be why it may not currently be on our website. And because it hasn't been adopted, it also may not, when there's work in progress, it's not always, public all of our files are available, but when there's work in progress, that's not. And so as far as those surveys being available to the public, I'm going to get back to you on that.
Okay.
And it's
Craig, do you think the museum has
I
those
don't
surveys?
know if they might have that. They should, but
Yeah.
And I was going to say it actually benefits the city to have a survey like that, because if, say, 210 Drown Street comes up for a project, they can go to the database. It's given a 2 on that, which means don't worry about it. It's not historic. And then they don't have to do any further research on it. But if you look at the historic report that Caltrans representatives did on the downtown, it's just amazing the process they went through to identify which buildings were historic, which they needed to study, and which they did. And it's an incredible process, but they didn't just look at what was designated as historic. They wrote letters, they went to the museum, they checked these surveys, and they used all this data to compile. I think they compiled 39 buildings that they had to look into, and then from those they narrowed down to 28, and those were the ones that they studied and that they put as contributing properties.
Great, thank you. Again, trying to get that information out to folks. Information is key. Questions, Rick?
Well, I don't have any questions per se, but just sitting here listening to Craig and his summation of things, and the assistant attorney and the HPC liaison, I know that the folks who've been showing up here lately in regards to this Crotona and Liberal Catholic Church and Mr. Oursland, I just wonder if, in spite of all these explanations, if they're really understanding what we're saying as it relates to them. And I can't really explain it myself because I'm trying to take it in too. So I mean, I don't know if they can be asked this or what, but I mean, they're still here. They're still keenly interested in what we're trying to say and what we're trying to summarize. I just wonder if their questions pertaining to them are still floating out there in their minds as unanswered. I'm not sure. I'm just positing this to the room.
Oh, excellent point. Mara, are you available for a resource? Well, you've talked to people since the Miller started going out, so.
I am available Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, and I am certainly available not only to the commissioners and the city attorney's office, but also to the public. And the information that I've been giving out and will continue to give out is regarding structures of merit. It hasn't changed since, we're following our code, and right now these desired or proposed structures of merit are not structures of merit at this time because they are not on a list that has been adopted by the city council. And the other questions that have come before the commission have been responded to, but my responses have been questioned, and so I think there's probably a lot of confusion because of that. Things go around in circles. Structures of worship, it's been stated, staff has said that with an objection and with showing a proof of burden, that they would be exempt. Tax benefits. City of Ojai, there are no tax benefits through, or a Mills Act. You can't have a Mills Act agreement, so therefore there wouldn't be those kinds of benefits. And we are not speaking about any other benefits because they're not under our municipal code. So for structures of merit. The historic building code does not apply to structures of merit. Opting out is not an option for a structure of merit once it has been adopted. So these are things that are just for structures of merit that have been adopted. And there was another point. And I forget what that other point was. Sorry about that. However, I am available and to the public as well as to the commission, commissioners. I know what I wanted to say. Something that I know I've heard the commissioners say to the public, and that would be, a burden of being a structure of merit. Being on a list, if a list were adopted, means that you would not have to pay for or request a work permit, which is a discretionary permit, in order to do an alteration. A building permit would be reviewed by the community development director, and the community development director would decide whether or not he thought that should come before the commission for review and comment, not review and consideration. There would not be an approval process. It would just be a review and comment process. And that's really important. Is it a process? Yes. But it's not an approval, a request for approval process. So I just wanted to make that clear because I know that that's been, that I think there's concern about that. Okay?
Thank you. The other thing is, I know this is in the details, but sometimes people like details. So for each meeting we have, we get an agenda. In that agenda is the staff report information that's prepared by Maura for us. It has a lot of information that doesn't come up in our discussions here. You can get that by going to the city website, click government, click Historic Preservation Commission, click the one that says go to videos, that kind of thing. The agenda is on there. So all of the information that Mara just relayed to us is in that, very detailed in the packet that we have now. So that may answer some questions too, because again, we're trying to cover many things without getting solid answers because we want to go home tonight. So thank you, Maren. Thank you for that. Lorianne, questions?
I'm confused. Am I allowed to be confused?
You are. This is Lorianne's second meeting.
Yes. I'm confused. I think as the general public is, I've had people ask me questions and I tell them I'm new to this. I'm as confused as you all are. I mean, I don't think the rules are clear. I think that's,
I'm sorry, I want to know what I said was what isn't clear.
People, I mean, I too don't understand. If you have a home like this gentleman has, you know, it's a very important home because it's all over the country. Everybody knows this house, at least people that I know the house. I think that maybe I'm missing the point here, but I don't think that you're requiring him, if he becomes a structure of merit, to put the house back the way it was.
No, you're not required to, as Commissioner Walker, I think it was, said, if you're a structure of merit, and he was speaking about landmarks, you're not the only time a property or homeowner is required to do something is if, to my knowledge, is when you enter into an agreement like a Mills Act and you have a list of things that you have to do every year. But if you're a landmark or a structure of merit, you are not required to do structurally anything to your home, except you're not allowed to let it deteriorate.
Right.
But
I
other
think
than that, you don't have
a
to
lot of
paint
people
it
don't
or.
understand that.
No, it's just if you want to do something to
I
it.
don't think people
Well,
understand
now
that.
hopefully they do now because
So
I
why
said
can't
it
we
in.
have it spelled out clearly?
Where is it not? I
Well,
think
if
if
we
somebody
have-
asks the question.
If we have so many people that don't understand, well, see, I think.
guess that particular question
I'm
perhaps.
a person in the community too, and I know an awful lot of people. And there are a lot of people that don't understand.
Okay,
And
so
we have all these notions of what it means to be, quote, a structure of merit, which none of these properties are yet because they haven't been approved by the city council to be such, correct?
yeah, I think what happens is we talk about what is required as opposed perhaps to what is not required. So, and I think by elimination, maybe we assume that people know what's not required. So just so anybody doesn't know, if you're a structure of merit, you're not required to do anything except let us know when you want to do something. But we're not going to make you paint your building or make you.
But I mean, in listening to Mr. Prasad and the lovely lady there, I think they think that they're going to have to undertake a massive, am I not correct?
Yeah.
That's what you think?
Actually, I'm not sure if you want to ask a question of a member of the public, but I would like to just say one thing, and something that one of the other homeowners here, a different meeting, wasn't expressing that they thought they would be required to do anything. What they didn't want was to be on a list. They didn't want to be known by anyone. They didn't want people to peek over the fence when they were naked gardening. That's exactly what they said. They didn't want. They wanted their privacy, and if they wanted to do something, they didn't want to have to come before a body. So I think that. I think that's part of it. Now, if these, I think if you want to ask. Of course, you're free to ask the members here if they thought that because they would be potentially be on a structure of merit list, that they would have to do something. I think it's clear that we haven't told them they've had to do anything.
But I think that they think they do, and may I ask that question? I mean, I'm a new commissioner, and if I'm doing something I'm not supposed to do, then please tell me.
Oh, no, you can talk to your chair, and of course you can ask the member, you can ask questions of the public, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, I might.
Have them come up to the
We have the mic, please?
Please. Oh, if you can come up to the podium, please.
Oh, no. I was saying that it's hard to hear you guys talking because your mics are off.
Mine's on.
But maybe we're not loud enough.
So my question to you is, if you were to become a structure of merit, okay, are you assuming then that that means you're going to have to do a lot of things to your property that's going to cost you a lot of money?
We are assuming that there will be restrictions. I'll give you a solid example. We have a building that's very old, and we would like to put it into a different use. The contractors and architect who came said it's too small, it needs to be enlarged. And the contractor said, this just needs to be torn down to the studs and then enlarged, because otherwise it would be more expensive to just patch up and try to fix what's there. And still the size would not meet the requirements. In which case, we're going through an alteration and almost a demolition, which is not allowed for a structure of merit. That was the #1 requirement in your list describing what's required of a structure of merit. No alteration and demolition. We'll go through extensive review for any alteration or demolition.
No, there would not be, and I just want to correct, because it wouldn't be an extensive review. There would only be a request for approval if you wanted to demolish it. If you wanted to alter it, the commission would review it and comment. Comment meaning saying, we love the way you're doing this, or they might say, you know, it would be nice if there are certain features that are historic on this original, and, you know, it would be great if you could carry them through, but they couldn't tell you you have to. It would just be a comment.
And could I say something about that, like what Brian pointed out about the old olive mill down off of Bald Street? And that was one that was on the survey and was considered to play a big part in the history. But it too was deteriorated, and it too would be cost more to just try to restore it than to demolish it. And they were given permission to demolish it. So just being a structure of merit or even a landmark doesn't necessarily mean that you are just doomed to take care of this building that is in terrible shape. If you can make the case like you are doing, that your property is not worth saving, that it's too badly deteriorated, and it would cost you so much to fix it up, that would be a burden. You don't even have to be a church. You could just be a private citizen, and if you can show that it would be, that you wouldn't be able to financially make it feasible, you can have it be demolished. So it's just a process that's set up to try to work to make sure that if there is a historic property, that all attention is given to it, but it doesn't necessarily prevent you from doing anything to the property, really.
Could that be written somewhere?
See, you were confused. You were confused.
Yes, because you're saying some things that I don't see written anywhere. And so if it could be written and it's clear, then we all know when we apply for a permit, we know what we'll get. Plus, the amount of time required to go through that review process. The other thing that I would just like to say, if I could be allowed, is that the code that you were talking about, reviewing and maybe having an ad hoc committee for, I don't know if you were talking about the government code, but what governs the structure of merit restrictions is not just a government code. It is actually state law. And the city of Ojai has to abide by that state law. The case law, I gave you a copy of one of them. The case law states that church or religious organizations are exempt. And regardless of and I would defer to the city attorney, that the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals have made this state law. So the city has no jurisdiction
Sorry
over
to
religious
interrupt, but just to
properties.
clarify, the commission was talking about reviewing and maybe editing the Ojai municipal code and not the state government code.
Okay, so in which case, anyway, what governs structure of merit restrictions is state law. And according to the Court of Appeals, yes, it is I highlighted it in the Court of Appeals judgment, saying that the city has no jurisdiction over this because
I'm
we have an
going to
exemption.
go back to the city attorney because
Yes, so the government code section that you're citing allows a city to create certain special regulations for certain historical resources. One of the city of Ojai's special regulations is the structure of merit. That government code section that you stated does allow for an exemption for certain religious organizations. So that's correct, but the state law and the city law are different. They're separate, and we're following both. Yeah.
Yes, I hope that the city will abide by the state law. The other thing is that you were saying that we are not a structure of merit yet, but in the case that was reviewed by the court, that was the very essence of it. They were imposing a restriction on a church, and they said, well, you're not yet declared a historical structure, so you're not exempt. And the court said they are exempt, even though they have not been declared, by virtue of the fact that they are a religious organization. So I wish you would look at the case law that I submitted, but that's my reading and the reading of our attorney.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification is that the structure of merit requirements haven't been imposed, so there's nothing to be exempted from yet. I think that's what Maura was trying to explain.
So there would be no restrictions until
Not at
they are
this time.
declared.
And you have provided your exemptions too, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay. One second.
What you brought up was wonderful. What you brought up is wonderful. People don't understand and stuff like that. Now, I don't have it in front of me, that piece of paper that said your thing is considered to be a structure of merit. And then it had boom, 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 boom. These requirements, boom, 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 that you have to follow, you have to do, and stuff like that. And, okay, but I'm just saying,
So yes, so Mr. Orslin and to anybody else, what I think we may be headed for is to put together an ad hoc committee that will address the questions that we've heard of the other benefits that other entities have, with differentiation, to address all of those things. So again, if people have comments, if people have questions, if people have suggestions, please send those to Mara. And if in fact we do head towards doing an ad hoc committee, then we want input from everybody. And part of it will be to get everything in line and get it clarified or simplified, like we're trying to do with the local downtown historic district and their guidance, as a part of the code that we would recommend to the city council. Because I don't think any of us are like, oh, let's make this even more complicated.
anyway, what you said and stuff like that, it wasn't said and stuff like that. You didn't say that. People read that and it scares the hell out of them because there's the consequences. What happens if this happens or something? Are they going to condemn my property?
Let me just finish by saying I don't want you to worry or have a heart attack over this. I think that everybody needs to just, we're working on it. And we're all of us are trying to understand and to move forward. And we're going to move forward. But I don't want you to worry, okay?
People, when they
I
read
know that.
what's it, are
I
scared.
know that because I've heard from some people.
That's why we're holding
That's
these
right.
hearings.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes,
Sorry to-
that's why we appreciate everyone who shows up and what they might say. And people who can't show up to please send it tomorrow, because I'm sorry, Mr. Vorel, sorry. He asked me on the way in if I'd received his letter, and then when you said that, Mara was like, because Mara's really good about passing along information. She gave us Elena Dovo Santos information. I got that this afternoon. I went through the historic resources report that was in that. Just for an aside, I will tell you I've already downloaded that historic resources report, and I'll upload it to the museum's Dropbox account, because those are the kind of things that we have for a digital archive and information that will be helpful to someone down the line. But yeah.
I'll give you a copy.
Okay, great, thank you.
Brian?
Yeah.
Do we need to make somehow request that this be put on the agenda for the next meeting to form the ad hoc? And I mean, what do we need to do to put that in motion?
Well, if you request it and Loran requests it, it's on the agenda, right? So what do we do to make sure to come back to this in the next agenda?
Yeah, we just need 2 people to request that structures of merit be.
I requested.
I requested too.
Okay, so structures of merit to come back.
Yeah, yes, and
For an ad hoc, to form an ad hoc.
And so are you able to, I'm gonna.
Thank you. In my view, that is close enough to our current discussion so that we can make this the ad hoc recommendation as well. So it's not a different agenda item. So the ad hoc recommendation is not a different agenda item that needs to be re-agendized. We can do that in this
so we
meeting.
can have that on the request that for, are you saying about doing it tonight or having it on our agenda for the next meeting? Or
Having
We
it on the
can
agenda.
do either. We can create the ad hoc committee tonight because it is so intertwined with this item.
Can a commission of 5 have an ad hoc committee of 3?
That's why I'm
No.
thinking we could wait till
Answer
the
is no.
next
Yeah.
meeting, and then we'd have maybe more members, the higher.
That's
we'd
fine
have
too.
3 on the committee.
Yeah, that, well,
Commission of 5 have a ad hoc committee
No.
of 3.
No, I
They
don't
can't
think
have an ad hoc committee until they have more members on the commission.
yes.
that's true.
Right, and so,
Yes.
so there's, so at the.
At the
or
next
if
meeting,
you- But at the next meeting, you're not gonna have 7 members. At the next meeting, you're still gonna have 5 members.
if we have 1 member, we can have 3. If we have 6, we can have an ad hoc of 3.
Right, so but
'Cause
you
it's
still
not
need
a
another,
majority.
you still need another,
I'm just waiting for the clock to tick, okay? That's why I said at the beginning of this meeting that as of December 28th, that clock has ticked, and the new commission guidelines are in place. And there is a list of people that are ready to be contacted, and the process is in place to name who will be interviewing those individuals. So we're just, by the next meeting, we should be, we'll be a whole lot closer than we are now.
But we could start with 2, right, if we don't have.
And we
well,
could
you have
increase
an
it.
ad hoc committee of 2, oh, no.
Not on the
you don't
structures of
even
merit,
have-
we don't.
Oh, okay, so that means that this evening, since you have a commission of 5, even though you don't have 5 attending this
Right.
evening, you can have an ad hoc of 2.
Yes.
You can do that this
That we
evening,
could.
then. We don't need to wait till the next meeting to do that. You can do that this evening.
The only reason I would wait for the next meeting is that I would like to have Vice Chair McCatton here for that meeting.
Because,
Okay, so you're requesting then to have that discussed at the next meeting,
yeah,
for that
because
reason.
she introduced the motion last meeting to meet with the attorney and find out what changes could be made in the language. And then you gave the possible suggestion that we could restudy the integrity and in a committee. So I think this kind of puts it all together, if we could form that next
Yeah, talk
meeting.
about it in the next meeting with Gina.
Yeah, form it then.
That sounds like a good plan, and I would also recommend that the commission think about what they want the ad hoc committee to do, because I think there's two different intents for the ad hoc committee so far, is to review the structures of merit and to review the Ojai Municipal Code. So the committee can do anything, but we just need to know exactly what it's going to
And
do.
the survey too.
And the survey. A lot of different things.
They're all connected.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, so I would like to see that on the agenda, but we already have the two people, so.
And so those three topics are separate. And so I'm just going to reiterate what Thais just said, and that is that at the discussion, it would be discussed what that ad hoc committee is for.
Yes.
She mentioned changes to the Ojai Municipal Code, the survey, and the structures of merit list.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah. Sounds good.
okay. Just want to make sure everybody just heard that. So at the next meeting, we will be discussing the formation of an ad hoc. So again, and we just listed several things that ad hoc will discuss, but again, it is something that we could actually add a person outside the HPC to that ad hoc, correct? It's only that it can't have more than three commissioners if we have 6.
I believe that's correct, because the code states that the commission can create civic and citizens committees. So I think we can add.
Sorry, yeah, I'm trying to, we're just trying to determine that we could, so currently we have 5 individuals. If we formed an ad hoc tonight, we could only have 2 because you cannot have a majority. There is a code change that affects commission composition and solicitation. We will have got permission as of December 28th to increase our numbers from 5 to 7. When we go to 6 or 7, we can then make it a 3-person ad hoc. That's 3 commissioners. The question I asked is, can we get an individual outside the commission to join that ad hoc? And I think we've said yes.
So the code states that the commission can create civic and citizens committees, but we're not sure if that means that non-commissioners can be added to the committee. So we're going to have to look
Can
further
I just
into that.
when we did the language, the code changes for the historic code, we had an ad hoc committee that had 2 commission members.
Uh-huh.
It had it had a city council person, and it had me on it, and I wasn't on the commission
Yeah.
at that time, and you as well.
Yeah, it was
Well, you
Elise
were on
and
the
I.
commission at
Elise
that
and I were
time.
the 2.
Yeah, so it
represent-
was kind of multiple stakeholders. I don't know if that's still the policy.
So,
We'll have that confirmed
could
for the
let us
next
know.
meeting.
Sure.
We'll have that confirmed
Sure.
at the next meeting.
so anyway, I just wanted to let you know what the next step going forward is that ad hoc committee will be formed. Your input will be considered, and questions will be worked towards getting those answered. And as Commissioner Sims said, putting in a language where people can understand it.
And I think because of your input, that's why we're forming this ad hoc. A big part of it was listening to you and hearing some of your questions and some of your thoughts on it. And we figured we'd go back to the drawing board a little bit and see what we could work out that would help everyone.
Yes. So anything else on this item? Nope. Sweet. Okay. Let's see, Civic Historic District. Okay, we are now moving to, thank you all very much. You're welcome to stay, or you can go home. We're done with that item. Okay, future agenda items. All we have on there is the
So at this-
Ojai Civic Center Historic District.
Right, at this time, that's all we have. However, that, we've also verbalized, though, that the structures of merit will be on the next agenda, along with the Ojai Civic Center Historic District. So that will be January 11th.
Great. Thank you. January 11th? Yes.
Yes, so the letter that was just handed to, from the chair was from the Liberal Catholic Church, and that letter, I'm pretty sure that that letter is on our website as having been received. If it is not, it will be on the website tomorrow morning. And thank you for bringing it. My apologies for not passing it out. I'm not sure what happened along the pipeline, but we did receive it. And I'm going to make copies for all of the commissioners before we finalize tonight, just to make sure that we are following the Brown Act.
Great.
Okay, so if you'll excuse me for one moment, I'm going to do that.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so where are we? We are on, so we did, actually, let's see. So one thing I wanted to do on commissioner comments, we'll let Mara do the planning when we get back, is I want to thank the commission and everybody for the awards that were given out. Thank you.
Thank you. You should become a lawyer. You should become a lawyer.
I read a lot.
So, good night. So Tuesday night, we did, the council did get us on their agenda. I tell them it was a chess match. Every time something, a move would take place, and then it just all went. So we did get the awards that were given out Tuesday night at City Council. It went very well. Craig, thank you for being there. Mark Lewis was there, Joyce Robinson was there, Tiffany Rochelle and Paul Hibbler were there. I was there with my wife, who had never been inside this room before. Hard to believe, huh? She finally got to see where so anyway, that was a wonderful event. And thank you all for your support over these years. Yes.
If we know of someone that might be interested in serving on the committee.
Turn on your microphone.
Is your mic on?
Oh, yeah, what's the process? What should we tell them?
Tell them to call Weston Montgomery,
Okay.
because
He's out of town now, by the way.
oh, is he? Okay, well, tell him to call me. So, yeah, Weston Montgomery is, the city clerk, and so he's the one that they'll fill out the application with.
Okay, and what's the deadline? Because you were talking about maybe having it.
There really is no deadline. I mean, we're not going to start until January,
Okay.
because, the council's not going to get to it for a while. So, yeah, no, that would be great. That's the same thing I've done, is just told people, call Weston.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, the other thing is, I want to give you an update on the Harry Hunt Senior plaque. Oh, boy. So I'm told by Trevor Ashton, the owner of Aswell Trophy, that we should receive it the beginning of January. And so I have alerted the family, some things that have happened, and so January is a great time for them. So we will get the plaque in. I'm sure it will go to Sherry, and then breathe a sigh of relief that we have the plaque, and then we'll work with the family to figure out, and, the city with Maura and everybody else to figure out getting that placed. But I just wanted to give everybody an update on that. That's all I have. Anything else, Rick?
No. Nothing else.
Loran? No? Huh? She's still here. Hey. Craig? Okay, great. Okay. Gavel bang. Thank you all. Thank you, Steve, for being here. Thank you, John, for coming tonight.